Some cars are machines built for a purpose. Others are mistakes best forgotten by history. But a very rare few are misunderstood revolutions waiting in the shadows, waiting for the world to catch up to their genius. Think about the late 80s and the dawn of the 90s. The world was fracturing and reforming. Boundaries were falling. And in the heart of Bavaria, a quiet, desperate storm was brewing inside the secretive research and development walls of BMW. They had an existential problem on their hands. The E30 was an absolute icon, a boxy god of the 80s that had conquered touring car racing and defined the yuppie generation. How do you replace a god? The truth is, you do not. You have to kill the past to build the future. Welcome to the untold story of the E36. The middle child, the highly controversial heir to the throne, the car that the purists initially called too heavy, too soft, and far too complicated, only to prove everyone dead wrong and solidify its place as the ultimate driving machine of an entire generation. Let us step back into the dimly lit design studios of Munich in the mid-80s. The Cold War is beginning to thaw. The internet is barely a whisper in military laboratories, and automotive design is stubbornly stuck in a rigid paradigm of sharp angles, flat surfaces, and chrome bumpers. Inside the FIZ, the Cutting-Edge Research and Innovation Center, chief designer Klaus Luther and exterior designer Boyka Boyer are having sleepless nights. The directive from the board of directors is terrifyingly simple, yet seemingly impossible to execute. They are told to make the next 3 Series bigger, make it significantly safer, make it much faster on the Autobahn, but above all, make sure it still feels like a pure, unadulterated 3 Series. Secret meetings are held behind frosted glass doors. Countless sketches are furiously drawn and immediately torn up. Full-scale clay models are meticulously sculpted over hundreds of hours, only to be scraped down and destroyed the next morning. They know a massive aerodynamic wall is rapidly approaching. The upright, boxy shapes of the past simply cannot cut through the air efficiently enough for the high-speed demands and fuel economy regulations of the coming decade. So, they decide to take a risk, a massive, company-altering risk that could cost them their jobs. They abandon the aggressive, forward-leaning shark nose that had defined the brand for decades. Instead, they slant the headlights backwards behind an aerodynamic glass cover. They angle the iconic kidney grills back to pierce the wind. They dramatically slope the windshield and smooth out the roofline. They create what the designers internally called the dolphin shape. When the car finally breaks cover to the public in 1990, the purists' absolute riot. Letters of complaint flood the Munich headquarters. Enthusiasts argue that it looks too corporate, too bloated, and that it has completely lost its mechanical soul. But what those critics simply do not understand is that the E36 is not merely a new aesthetic shell draped over old bones. It is a monumental technological leap into the dark. Let us walk over to the front of the car, unlatch that long, heavy steel hood, and look deep into the beating heart of the beast. This is where the magic and the controversy truly lives. For the hardcore traditionalists, the early 4-cylinder models like the 318i felt like a step backward in pure excitement. But the real story, the legend of this chassis, begins when we talk about the inline 6s. Enter the EM50 engine architecture. This is a profound masterpiece of cast iron and aluminum. 24 valves breathing in perfect mechanical harmony, utilizing dual overhead camshafts to flow air like never before. It was silky smooth, balancing primary and secondary forces so perfectly that you could balance a coin on the intake manifold while at idle. But the brilliant engineers in Germany knew it lacked that low-end punch, that immediate grunt off the line. So, a few years into production, they introduced a word that would become an absolute legend and occasionally a maintenance nightmare in equal measure: VANOS, variable valve timing. By using oil pressure to physically advance or retard the intake camshaft, VANOS optimized torque across the rev range, essentially giving the engine a split personality. It became a smooth, refined cruiser at 2,000 RPM, but transformed into a screaming, metallic banshee as you pushed it toward its 7,000 RPM redline. And then, The legendary mad scientists at the division known as EMGmbH finally get their hands on the chassis. Generation M3 is born, and it shatters every expectation. Initially launching with the ES50B30, a 3.0-liter block pushing 286 naturally aspirated horsepower, it was a revelation. Later, they unleashed the mighty 3.2-liter Evolution model, delivering a staggering 321 horsepower. Connected to a bulletproof ZF manual transmission, shifting gears in this car is a visceral, mechanical symphony. However, to truly understand the ES36, we must look away from the engine and crawl underneath the car. The chassis is where the dark arts of suspension geometry were perfected. For the very first time, the 3 Series abandons the unpredictable and frankly dangerous semi-trailing arm rear suspension of its predecessor. The engineers introduce the revolutionary Z-axle, a highly complex multi-link setup directly derived from the exotic Z1 Roadster. This brilliant piece of engineering keeps the rear tires planted perfectly flat on the tarmac, maximizing the contact patch even under the most extreme, violent cornering loads. When you combine that rear grip with a near-perfect 50-50 weight distribution, the car ceases to be a machine and becomes an extension of your own body. It pivots around the driver's hips like it is telepathic. The ultra-stiff front struts, the heavily reinforced subframes, the surgically precise rack and pinion steering, every single nut, bolt, and bushing was obsessed over by men in white lab coats who cared only about cornering speeds and steering feel. But this pursuit of perfection was not without its shadows, and we have to talk about the Great Divide, the infamous transatlantic controversy that still angers American enthusiasts today. While Europe received the fire-breathing ES50 engines with individual throttle bodies and solid lifters, the United States market was handed a severely detuned version. The UESS spec M3 received what was essentially a heavily modified 325i engine, producing only 240 horsepower. BMW claimed it was due to strict emissions regulations and the massive cost of federalizing the complex European motor, but for decades, American drivers felt cheated, driving what European purists jokingly called an M3 Lite. Yet, ironically, this torque-heavy, incredibly reliable American engine made the USS M3 one of the greatest daily drivable sports cars of the 90s. Let us close the hood and slowly walk around the exterior. Notice how the lines flow with an understated, restrained aggression. It does not need massive wings or ridiculous fender flares to look fast. The incredibly low belt line gives the driver immense visibility, psychologically connecting you to the rushing asphalt below. The famous Hofmeister kink on the C-pillar is sharper than ever, visually pulling the weight of the cabin over the rear wheels to constantly remind you of its rear-wheel drive dynamics. This aesthetic is not just for show, it is highly functional. Through relentless wind tunnel testing, the drag coefficient was dropped dramatically to an incredibly slippery 0.29. Now, open the heavy steel door. Listen to that solid vault-like thunk as you close it behind you. You are now sitting in a masterclass of driver-focused interior design. The entire center console is angled aggressively toward the driver's seat, isolating you in a dedicated command center. The passenger is merely a guest. You are the pilot. The analog dials in the gauge cluster glow in that signature BMW amber light, a very specific wavelength of orange, chosen specifically by aviation engineers because it does not ruin your natural night vision on a pitch-black road. The tactile, satisfying click of every single switch, the firm but supportive bolsters of the Vader sports seats in the M3. The cabin was obsessively designed to feel secure and planted, a cocoon that could effortlessly cruise at 250 kilometers per hour on the de-restricted Autobahn without the driver ever breaking a single drop of sweat. Of course, only true enthusiasts know the dark secrets of this interior. The inevitable sagging headliner that touches your hair, the door cards that miraculously unglue themselves after a decade in the sun, and the delicate plastic cooling system parts under the hood like the water pump impeller and thermostat housing that act as ticking time bombs. These are the quirky, sometimes infuriating scars of ownership that bond 336 owners together in a secret fraternity of preventative maintenance. But a car's legacy is never just built on raw metal, factory numbers, and plastic clips. A car's true legacy is forged by what the people do with it after it leaves the showroom. The 36 did not just win on the track, although it absolutely dominated touring car championships across the globe, from the grueling Attic GT Cup to the legendary British Touring Car Championship. No, the 36 conquered something much more important. It conquered the streets. As the car depreciated in the early 2000s, it became the ultimate blank canvas for a new, rebellious generation of tuners and builders. It was the absolute weapon of choice for a rapidly growing underground motorsport known as drifting. Its incredibly predictable chassis, its long wheelbase, and its easily swappable parts bin made it an absolute legend when traveling completely sideways in a cloud of tire smoke. You saw it dominating street racing scenes. You saw it gripping mountain passes in high-speed, illegal pursuits, and you saw it in the background of 1,000 car culture videos. It became the global symbol of accessible rear-wheel drive performance. Special models like the stripped-down M3 LTW, beloved by icons like Paul Walker, elevated the car to an almost mythical status among collectors. Painted in pristine alpine white with aggressive tricolor checkered flag decals, the LTW shed hundreds of pounds of sound-deadening radio equipment and luxury features to create a raw, track-focused weapon that is incredibly highly sought after today. Finding a clean, completely unmodified, naturally aspirated inline-six 36 today is like trying to find a ghost in the daylight. They have been mercilessly driven, violently crashed, meticulously rebuilt, engines swapped with V8 motors, and loved to absolute death by multiple generations of drivers. It has made the long, arduous transition from an expensive, elitist luxury sedan to a cheap, disposable drift missile, and now, finally, to a highly respected, rapidly appreciating classic. The vocal critics from 1990 who called it too heavy and too soft are completely silent now. The BMW E36 is not just another forgotten chapter in a dusty automotive history book. It is the crucial, unbreakable bridge between the pure, analog past of motoring and the highly insulated, digital future we live in today. It is perhaps the last generation of the 3 Series that feels entirely mechanical. A car where you can actually feel the gears meshing through the shifter and the texture of the asphalt pulsing through the steering wheel. Yet, it simultaneously paved the way for modern aerodynamics and advanced suspension geometry. It demands absolute respect. It demands a driver who intimately understands its mechanical quirks, and it deeply rewards them with a raw, visceral experience that modern, sterile, severely overweight, and computer-controlled cars simply cannot ever replicate. It is a misunderstood genius that had to wait 30 years to finally get the universal respect it always deserved. So, what do you think about the legendary E36? Is it the absolute peak of the 3 Series lineage, the perfect balance of old and new, or do you still prefer the unforgiving, boxy classics of the 80s? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and if you felt the mechanical passion in this hidden garage tonight, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden secrets of automotive history. Keep driving, keep wrenching, and I will see you in the next one.